Okay, so let's dive right in. We're talking about Iran, a nation that's sitting on some of the world's biggest energy reserves, but at the same time, it's standing right on the edge of a post-oil cliff. Its future is anything but certain, and the path it chooses next, well, that could define it for generations to come. You see, this powerful slogan, the one that echoed all around the world, it was about so much more than social rights. It was, as the source material points out, the collective cry of a young, super-educated generation just watching their economic prospects evaporate. It's a really powerful signal of a deep, deep anxiety about what the future holds. And that anxiety? Well, it's rooted in some pretty startling numbers. I mean, if the world keeps moving towards net zero, Iran's oil revenue, which is the absolute backbone of its economy, could shrink to just 1/5 of what it is today. And that's within 2 decades. Just try to imagine 80% of your main income source just gone.
So to make up for that, just to keep things from getting worse, Iran's non-oil exports would need to grow by a staggering 19%. Not just 1 year, but year after year, for 2 decades straight. That is an incredibly high bar to clear. Some would say almost impossible.
All right, so all of this really sets the stage for the central paradox of modern Iran. It's this nation of just incredible potential that's wrestling with a massive, and you could argue, self-inflicted crisis. So let's break down what that actually looks like.
So, on the one hand, you've got this immense potential, the world's third largest oil reserves, second largest gas reserves, plus a really young, highly educated population. But then, on the other hand, you have this looming crisis, crippling sanctions, a super inefficient economy, and a state that frankly struggles to earn trust from its own people.
And that brings us to the first of 2 possible futures we're going to look at. This is the path Iran is on right now if nothing fundamental changes. Let's call it the business as usual scenario. And this chart illustrates that trajectory perfectly. It's pretty clear, right? The data projects an energy system that stays almost completely dependent on fossil fuels all the way out to 2050. The mix itself barely changes. The only thing that really grows is how much they consume.
And the environmental cost of just sticking to this path? Oh, it's enormous. The energy sector is already responsible for nearly 85% of the country's greenhouse gas emissions. And if they stay on this track, those emissions are just going to keep climbing, and steeply. This reliance is really the engine behind the economic strains we're about to see.
And this dependency, it's not just numbers on a chart. It has a direct and often really painful human cost. It creates these precarious, informal jobs like patient companions because there's a nurse shortage. It absolutely crushes digital entrepreneurs. You've got YouTubers whose revenue has collapsed by 90% as VPNs get detected. And it fuels just massive financial dysfunction.
And then, as if all these internal problems weren't enough, you have to layer on international sanctions. They basically isolate Iran's economy, block access to critical technology and money, and just make everything, from insuring a tanker to buying spare parts, incredibly difficult and expensive. It just stifles any attempt to modernize its most critical sector.
But amidst all this bleakness, there is another path. It's a vision for a kind of national rebirth that some experts are calling a renaissance. A mix of Iran and Renaissance.
What this vision imagines is a completely different future for Iran. We're talking about one where Iran transforms itself by moving beyond oil, by embracing technology, by leveraging its incredible human capital, and strategically re-engaging with the rest of the world. And right at the heart of this alternative path is a pretty radical energy transition. I mean, just look at the chart. Instead of just burning more and more fossil fuels, you see this dramatic shift towards electrification across every sector. And it's all driven by becoming much more efficient.
And when you put these 2 ways of generating electricity side by side, wow, the comparison is just stark. On the left, you've got the status quo, almost entirely natural gas, but on the right, the Renaissance path would see renewable energy, mostly wind and solar, jump to an incredible 73% of the power supply. That is a monumental shift.
But you've got to understand, this is about way more than just energy. It's a fundamental overhaul of the whole system. It's about transparency and technology and global standards to attract investment and clean up governance. And most importantly, it's about empowering Iran's single greatest resource, its people. Now, of course, this kind of transparency is a massive political challenge because it directly threatens a lot of established economic and power structures.
Okay, so you might be thinking, how on earth could a transformation this big actually happen? Well, the Renaissance plan isn't just a dream. It actually proposes a clear, phased roadmap to get there.
And the strategy is pretty smart. In the first couple of years, the idea is to use the oil wealth they already have to stabilize the economy. Fund critical infrastructure, get inflation under control. Then, in the medium term, the real work begins. Diversifying, strengthening governance to build investor trust, and expanding into new sectors. And the long-term goal? To become a true regional economic hub, driven by a vibrant private sector that attracts global talent and capital.
So there you have it, two radically different futures for Iran. One is basically a continuation of the current struggles, and the other, well, it's a bold vision of renewal and global reintegration.
At the end of the day, the choice really boils down to this single, powerful image. That blue line represents the business-as-usual path, rising emissions, resource depletion, and economic stagnation. And the purple line? That represents the IR Renaissance, a path of sustainability, stabilized emissions, and the potential for real, genuine prosperity.
The potential is absolutely undeniable. The resources are there. The human capital is ready and waiting. But as the future of a nation of nearly 100 million people hangs in the balance, the decisive question, the one everything hinges on, remains one of political will.